Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got for you some Caliban gameplay and a tank review on this thing. Now, I haven't played a huge amount of games in this thing, I will openly admit, but I wanted to try and get this review out as quick as possible so that you guys can see what this thing is all about. So, the Caliban Tier 8 British Premium Heavy Tank. This thing was is in the Christmas boxes this year. I'm speaking in 2021 if you're watching this in the future. And it is an absolute meme tank. Probably one of the memeiest tanks they've put in the game in a very, 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 very long time. You've got to imagine that a G-Saw and a KV-2 have kind of had a baby and made it into a heavy tank, and who the hell knows what has happened. So, a little bit about the tank. Mobility isn't too bad. 33 km/h top speed is a little limited, but the horsepower per ton is really nice at about 18, so you can climb hills quite well. It's just the top speed is limited, which is kind of annoying. You could fit a turbo, but as I'll come on to in the equipment, it's a compromise. As well as that, this thing's armour, I don't actually know a lot about the armour. I didn't pay any attention to the armour. We'll come into that when we're in the comparison and everything. But what this gun is all about is this big old boomstick. 152mm HE gun at tier 8. And it's an auto reloader. Basically, you have two shells, although for the sakes of being any kind of competitive, the majority of the time, I would recommend load in at the start of the game, and then, for the love of God, only fire one shell. Because if you don't, oh my god, your DPM. We'll come on to that in a second. But in other news, say goodbye to 973 HP. Oh my god, this thing never ceases to amaze me. So this thing gets 850 alpha, like I said, 180mm of pen on the HE, which is really, really nice. 2 shell auto reloader, as I said. You can load premium AP if you want to. It does 600 alpha, 292 penetration, which is like really, really high at tier 8. Fire 1, and if you do want a second shell, you fire the second shell, and 688 into the third man there with HE. I think the HE is definitely going to be the way to go with the HE changes, and it having 180mm of pen means that anything pretty much turns its side to you. You can pen it, even obviously if it's through tracks. So, yeah, the auto reloader, it's not, but it is. It is an auto reloader because it is. You can see I'm auto reloading. You can fire 2 shells, but you don't want to, because as soon as if you fire that second shell, you have a 38-second reload on it. 38 seconds. That's mental. That's ridiculous amounts of like reload time. It's absolutely mad. Hello there, Mr. Caliban. Goodbye, Mr. Caliban. And again there, I should have waited for the second shell to load in, but I wanted to make sure that I made that shell count. But it's mad. 38-second reload on the second shell and 20-second reload on the first shell. So like I said, at the start of the game, you want to make sure that you load in your both shells, and then if you can, obviously it's not always possible, and if you know you're not going to be engaged for a little while, like I'm about to do here, just have my first shell load back in again. Tuavang, he rams, and as he gets rammed, he gets turned a little bit to the side. I fire and finish him off through the side of his tank, and that does 764 damage. But again, I only fired that shell because I know that I'm not going to be... I can choose not to engage for the next minute or so. Because if you fire that second shell, it's so brutal, this reload. You want to basically play it almost like a KV-2, with just firing the first shell and then literally being like, right, I've got a 20-second reload. Right, I've got a 20-second reload. Right, I've got a 20-second reload. And then, like I say, if you really need to, dip into that second shell. But I would recommend, where possible, don't fire the second shell unless you absolutely have to, or you want to just absolutely ruin someone's day, like you're shooting the side of a tier 10 or a tier 9 or something, and you want to do like almost 2k damage to them, because this thing being 850 alpha, it can roll for over 1,000. Can you imagine? I think that should be a challenge for Steve Steve, I'm challenging you to it. Like with your 2,000 damage roll on the FVs, I challenge you to try and get a 2,000 roll on this thing. I actually mess up a little bit here. I was gonna shoot the Tornvang while he was reloading, and I didn't, and I died because of it. I do get the shot in, but unfortunately, it doesn't pen. Because I know his reload is quite long. He fired at me, I took the damage for it, and then I pushed forwards, and then I got distracted by Artie and didn't even end up killing the Artie. I should have just pushed forwards, put a shell into the Tornvang, backed up, and then I would have been in the same situation where I'd have shot him, and it wouldn't have mattered. But anyway, that was 3,777 damage in not that long. It's only about 5 minutes, which is pretty nice. Like I said, you are firing HE, so you'll have some games where that will happen, and then you'll have some games where just, you know, the amount of shells I fired there, if I wouldn't have penned as many as I did, I'd have probably done like a K, 1.5k maybe. So, nah, sucks, but it is what it is. And yeah, that's the Caliban. It's going to be an absolute meme tank. Like, it's not going to be something that you're going to play in all seriousness. It's other things about it. Obviously, we'll come into the stats in just a second, but as you can probably clearly see, accuracy, awful. One of the worst in the game. Aim time, awful. One of the worst in the game. It's basically artillery accuracy and aim time, but just on a regular tank. Shell velocity is pretty terrible as well. It's just all about that HE alpha, just punching through people. 180 millimeters of pen and punching through people. It seems like it's a terrible idea to add this to the game because it sucks. You make one mistake and you're going to get slapped for 850 by something. But it does seem... It's a broken tank, but it seems relatively balanced. It's broken as in, like, it shouldn't be able to do 850 alpha twice within I think it's 3.75 seconds inch clip. But in terms of game balance, if you play right against it, like side scrape, make sure that it can't pen you, it's absolutely awful. Because it does, if it can't pen you, it does 200 damage twice, and then literally has to sit there for a minute. So if you see one of these things fire twice, you can go kill it. Any tier 8 tank, even, I think, an ELC? No, maybe not. Maybe with the exception of the ELC, even 90, if he's on full health, you can kill it. Because your DPM, you've basically got an M of your DPM to kill him. So whatever your DPM is at tier 8, as long as it's more than 1,500, which I'm pretty sure near enough everything is, you can kill this thing if it's fired both shells. Obviously, as long as they're not at you, because if it is and you've been penned, you're probably dead, but it's just honestly absolutely mental. This tank is so many extremes when it comes to highest or lowest. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, let's go take a look at the actual stats. I would say compare it to others. I'll leave something for a comparison, but this thing doesn't really compare to anything else. So yeah, we'll jump over into Tank GG. Okay, so here we go, guys. Like I said, this thing doesn't compare directly to anything. So I've chucked T-34 up just because it's kind of got good gun depression and quite high alpha, but low DPM. And then gun handling that's not amazing. And then also a KV2, just so you can kind of, because I think near enough everybody's played games in the KV2, just so you can get a feel kind of what this thing's gun is like compared to the KV2. But mobility and stuff, I'll just quote the stats. It doesn't like really matter because everything this compares to mobility-wise is kind of not comparable to it at all. So first things first, DPM actually looks pretty strong. Obviously, that is with your HE alpha, and that is firing off your first shell only. If you fire your second shell, your DPM is just absolutely just tanked. It's awful. You do 1,700, 1,700 damage in the clip if you do fire both shells, 850 alpha, so a little less than the KV2, but still absolutely incredible. And it's got the better pen at 180 pen as well, which means you can actually semi-reliably pen things with this HE. 3.75 seconds between shells if you do decide to play it like an auto reloader, although, like I said, I would not recommend it. Shell velocity is really low, like even compared to the KV2, it's low, 350 meters per second, which is quite terrible. And you've only got 25 shells as well. However, with the DPM, I would say don't worry too much about burning through all of those tanks. It still gives you a really, really nice damage potential, which is quite nice. Now, on to the gun handling. Yeah, it's not great. 4.1 seconds aim time, so worse than the KV2. However, the accuracy is better, which is very nice. 0.58, but the dispersions are worse by a lot. Like, really, that scared the Jesus out of me there. Really, really, really bad gun dispersions. I think probably some of the worst, with the exception of maybe artillery. 0.38 while moving, 0.38 while traversing the tank, and 0.2 whilst traversing the turret. This thing does not keep any kind of accuracy when you move the tank. You literally have to stop and aim. There is nothing moving forward, nothing like that. And that, it's just, it sucks. It really, really, really sucks. Which is why when we come onto the equipment, you'll know why I choose the equipment that I do. Because yeah, the aim time is terrible. The dispersions are terrible. You have to help that. Like, it's absolutely, it sucks. It really does suck. 10 degrees of gun depression is very, very nice. You can play this thing on a ridgeline, which is good. Mobility wise, as I said, I'm not really comparing. 33 kilometers an hour forwards is slow, but the horsepower per ton is really, really nice at 18, which is really weird combination. It really feels like you want to fit turbo. And again, when we come into the equipment, I kind of explain why I'm in two minds at the minute between turbo and accuracy, basically. Like, I'm honestly not 100% sure. Tank traverse of 30 degrees a second is actually pretty good. So the mobility, with the exception of the flat out top speed, is really, really nice. And the ground resistances are really, really nice. It's just, yeah, it's just that top speed. Turret traverse as well, 23 degrees a second, really, really, really slow. KV2 is slower, but it's still really slow. It's slower than a T-34, and that's saying something. Armor will come on to in a second. 1500 hit points, pretty much standard. And you got half decent camo, actually, which is really weird. 370 meters view range is also a bit terrible. So you could fit optics on this thing if you wanted to. But I don't know why you would want to. If you're playing at a range where optics are going to be a thing, you're playing the tank wrong, pretty much. Like, simple as that. Credits-wise, HE is actually quite expensive. So this thing I wouldn't really recommend as a credit maker either. So, yeah, what is this thing for? Memes. Absolute memes. That's all it's for. It's just for memes. That's it. 100% memes. Onto the armor. The tank's armor isn't that terrible. Like, hull down especially, the turret is actually really, really nice. With the exception of you have got a decent sized cupola. You gotta remember this is with HE. If I go with the 292mm AP, which is very high penetration. But you can even see with 292mm AP, the turret is still pretty pretty bouncy. If we compare it to, let's compare it to, say, a Canavan firing AP, so 220mm of penetration on the Canavan. You can see, hold down, this thing is a no-go. Lower plate is very weak and weak to other Caliban. Something that if you're playing it at the minute, there's going to be a lot of them around. Don't expose your lower plate. And also the cupola as well is really, really weak. But that's really, like, even firing premium in a Canavan, if this thing gets hull down, and it can, you're not going to go through it unless you hit that cupola, which is really, really nice. The armor is actually really quite nice. Side, not good. 35mm, which means you can be overmatched by 106mm guns, caliber guns and higher, which is kind of upsetting. Which means that if one of these things is firing AP back, it can overmatch full side armor, which is kind of annoying. And rear as well, same thing, 35mm. So yeah, the armor isn't terrible by no means. The frontal armor is actually pretty good, especially on the upper plate and on the lower plate. It's quite nice. If you're firing AP with a Canavan, upper plate you can still go through. Against tier 7s and tier 6s, the upper plate's going to be nice. When you use your gun depression, the upper plate is very nice as well. And yeah, that's pretty much all she wrote for the Caliban in terms of stats. So let's go jump into the garage and I'll take you through the my equipment setup and how you should play this tank, although I've pretty much already covered it. So here we go, guys, back into the garage, and I'm going to take you through the equipment, and I feel like this could be quite a hotly contested topic of what to actually pick on this tank. Like I said in the statistics, the rest of the tank isn't actually that bad. It's literally just the gun. So personally for me, that's how I've focused onto this thing. Crew skills I won't bother. You're going to have a Super Conqueror. I'm pretty sure everybody's got a British heavy crew somewhere. And if you haven't, use some of the cool funky crew members you get for the Christmas event or the Battle Pass or anything like that. You can have decent crew skills these days in no time whatsoever. So equipment-wise, this is what I'm recommending for now. Like I said, I've only played a couple of games. I've only played 3 games, so it may change. I'm honestly not sure. I've gone for improved aiming in the first slot, a gun laying drive in the second slot, and vert stabs in the third. I am tempted to put improved rotation mechanism on because the turret traverse is so slow, but I feel like being able to traverse the turret is all well and good, but if when it gets there, you're going to have to take 15 years to aim the gun, then yeah, obviously vert stabs just helps with that. Gun laying drive, because your aim time is like, it takes a third of a second, well, nearly 0.4 of a second off your aim time, which is just absolutely mad. And then improved aiming, obviously, because I don't want dispersion that's higher than like 0.5, that's higher than like 0.6, because I cry every team. It takes, improves your accuracy by 0.03, man. That's just ridiculous. Other options you could have if you don't want to focus entirely on the gun, you could go with optics, because the view range, turbo, you could go, I don't mind, this thing's mobility is actually pretty good in terms of horsepower per ton. Top speed is a little limited, so definitely something I might consider doing is putting turbo on the tank. I'm honestly not sure. I'm in 2 minds at the minute because the dispersion is terrible. So I really don't know whether to just go, right, I'm accepting it's terrible and I want to go faster. Or if I want to go, well, I want to make it a little bit better, but I'm going to sacrifice speed. So I'm in 2 minds between improved aiming and turbo at the moment. You could go vents if you really wanted to as well, because obviously that's just going to help everything, and you can put it in the bonus slot. I wouldn't recommend like hardening or anything like that, because that's not what this tank is about. This tank is about the gun. This tank is about basically being a KV2 at tier 8 with really nice HE pen and just absolutely slapping the shit out of people. This tank, I wouldn't recommend it as in like for, oh, it's a really serious tank. I want to be a really good tier 8 premium tank. Yeah, it ain't gonna happen. Money making wise, it's not that great. The standard HE rounds are really quite expensive as well. This tank is basically just for fun. It's a fun tank. It's funny as all hell. Just blapping people for like 900 alpha with your HE rounds. Or you can load AP and hit them for like 600 every time, which is really not that bad. It's just the issue with that is your DPM just absolutely tanks. But you can really annoy someone doing 1200 damage to them in 2 seconds. It's just then you've got a full minute reload. A full minute, which is really annoying. And that's one of the things, because it's a blessing and a curse. Obviously, big old curse, because you'd be taking like mad amounts of time off that reload. You'd be taking like 5 seconds off the reload with a gun rammer. But at the same time, because you can't fit a gun rammer, it does open up your options slightly more in terms of equipment, because effectively you've got 3 other slots to use rather than just 2 if the gun rammer was in play, because you would 100% want to take a gun rammer. But yeah, that is all she wrote for that video. This video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you have found it useful or enjoyed it in any way, shape, or form, please do give the video a like. Hopefully you've enjoyed looking at the new Caliban tank. If you're not subscribed to the channel, which the majority of people that watch my channel aren't, and you've liked what you see, please make sure you subscribe. And if you turn notifications on so you know when I upload. Other than that, thank you all so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.